3.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Idiomatic Top 3.
With Nicholas, I am the gaming correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic and movie critic. Let's be destructive.
Totally.
Let's talk about our top 3 remakes that we don't want to see.
All right.
You start this time.
Okay. Number 3, Titanic. First of all, I can't stand the movie.
Really?
I don't like the movie.
I actually like it.
It's a lame story. Yeah, I didn't like it. Okay, the girl's really hot naked, but it's really a lame story. And
I'm sorry, which one do you mean? Because there's one that's an actual girl, and there's one that just has the body of a 13-year-old girl.
Kate Winslet.
Okay, I thought you meant Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, no. She's hot. But, yeah, okay. Especially when I was a teenager, watching that movie. That was great.
Yeah, but if you're a teenager, anything with boobs is hot.
Yeah, I know. It still brings back good memories. But the main thing is, I do not want the theme song from that movie to be covered by, the most recent American Idol winner, and we have that play on the radio over and over and over for a whole summer. That would be horrible.
Yeah, Jordan Sparks. Yeah, that's what I want to see. That song by Jordan Sparks.
Yeah.
She's not the most recent, but she's the one that I see the most these days.
So yeah, that song, okay, we tolerated it for like 2 years or so. That's enough.
Do remakes always have to have the song in them, though?
To keep with the spirit of Titanic, yeah, you need the song. That song became bigger than the movie, so you were going to need that song.
Yeah. Well, I have bad news for you, my friend.
What?
Because they're not making a remake of it. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
But it was back to theaters in 2012 in 3D.
Oh, God.
So not only will you get to hear that song, you'll get to hear it sung in 3D.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, to a certain degree, as much as I think she's a talented vocalist, I think she's an undeniably talented vocalist. I do feel to a certain degree that Celine Dion needs more dimensions to her singing. So,
Oh, that was bad.
Oh, come on. Woo! I like the movie a lot more than you do. I wouldn't want to see a remake of it because it's such a phenomenon that hit a specific point in our culture that I don't think you can reproduce that. One of the things that's special about Titanic is just the enormous budget that went into it and the just ambition of the enterprise that went into it.
Yeah.
You try to remake that. Remakes, by nature, are cash grabs. So they're not going to pour as much money into it. So it's going to be very hard to sort of make a movie that doesn't look like a computer-generated set sinking in computer-generated
That's probably what they're going to do with CGI boats sinking with CGI people, and then close-ups of the one person just hanging on a piece of wood.
Yeah.
It's going to be very bad.
Yeah, as opposed to, say what you will about the movie's love story. You either get into it or you don't. And let's face it, it's about as subtle as a tractor in a library for the mute. But
yep.
The special effects are pretty kick-ass when the rooms are filling with water. It's impressive.
Yes, the special effects were great, but you had to suffer through like 2 hours of movie before you got to them.
You know what I really suffered through with that movie, though? What? 3 hours of water running. Because I saw it in theater.
Yeah.
I saw it in the theaters with my girlfriend. I actually was the one who wanted to see it, not her. Go figure. This was before the big hype, because we saw it in the first week.
Okay.
And I was like, James Cameron? Terminator 2? The guy is doing a serious movie? Yeah, I want to see that, Like Steven Spielberg when he did Schindler's List. It was a revelation, and certainly, say what you will about the rest of his work afterwards. Schindler's List is an opus for Steven Spielberg. And so I thought maybe, James Cameron could do the same thing with Titanic. So I was all into that. And then you sit there, it's 3 hours of water running.
You bought the big Coke there?
Yeah, I bought the big Coke, yeah. The funniest thing, though, we come out, we were in Kingston, Ontario at the time. And we come out, and I decide I really want to pee. For obvious reason. So I will go to my girlfriend, and I was like, I really want to pee. Just saying, I was like, oh, are you crazy? It's going to be plenty of people. It was like, well, it's either that or I pee in your car. So, like, seriously. I'm going to go pee. Yeah. So I went to go pee. I went to the washroom, and and you see the line as you go to the washroom, like, line of girls lining up to the washroom, circling almost the theater, and then like I think it melded into the line to see the movie. Like,
wow.
I think the news phenomenons when they show the lines of girls who wanted to see Titanic, I think some of them must have been the line to go to the washroom afterwards because it's just insane. And I'm watching, I was like, oh yeah, maybe my girlfriend's right. This is not going to end up well. And I reached the men's washroom and I enter, and there's 3 people in it.
Yep.
So that's my Titanic story.
All right. So what is your number 3?
My number 3, another epic movie, a different epic movie, Watchmen. It's Zack Snyder's Watchmen. And the reason why I don't want to see a remake of that is because I don't even see why we made the first one.
Okay, that's cheating a little bit.
No, here's the thing, because the remake's going to suffer from all the same problems.
Okay.
Watchmen was not a great movie, and certainly for the comic book fans, it's a fail. It's recognized as such, but most people don't really acknowledge why. They go like, "Oh, it's Zack Snyder's fault." It's like, no, Zack Snyder did as good as a job as you can be expected if you're going to be that loyal to the material. But here's the thing: Watchmen is a product of its time. It's a product of the Cold War. It's very much a Reagan era thing. Yes, in the alternate universe, Nixon is the president instead, but whatever.
Yeah,
it's all about the Cold War. It's all about like let's detonate a bomb and see if we're going to maintain the Cold War in that case. You know.
Yeah.
It's also an exploration of superheroes that was a lot more human than we were used to at the time. All of these things made it really innovative, the book, at the time.
Okay.
And the reason why the movie failed is because, well, when they started making superhero movies with like X-Men and Batman Begins and all of that, well, we already had very human superheroes, so you're not really bringing anything new to the table.
Okay.
And then, as for the Cold War analogy, obviously it doesn't really apply.
How do you get out of the Cold War, really?
Exactly.
I mean, Cold War is something so unique. I mean, it's a war, but no shots have been fired, really.
Yeah.
You know, it was a giant war between the Soviet Union and the United States. How do you replicate the Cold War, trying to make it more current? That has to be incredibly hard.
Well, yeah, and he kept it in the 80s, mind you.
Okay.
So he kept it as a period piece. But the problem with it is that the statement it makes is irrelevant. Because one of the problems is that there's a debate in the comic book about whether or not this is a good action. And this is a mild spoilers for those of you interested, so you might want to go la 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 for a few seconds. But they make an explosion in New York that unites everybody against a common enemy and brings peace to the world. And the big debate is whether or not that was okay to do, to sacrifice these lives to do that, you know? And of course, even if you make it in a period piece, you know, the statement, the nature of the argument doesn't work in a post 9/11 world.
No, it doesn't. You told me that, and you just told me explosion in New York and unified the world. I was like, I had 9/11 in my head immediately at that time. And that's not something I would want to see on screen. That's ridiculous.
Exactly, and the idea of having characters discuss whether or not this was a good thing and this will bring peace in light of what happened after 9/11. It's not just impertinent, it's in bad taste.
Yeah.
So I don't see how you can possibly ever retell the Watchmen story ever again. It's interesting to read. It's a good comic book if you read it in the context of it was written before all of these things happened and the writers were proven terribly wrong.
Yeah, I guess.
It's an interesting comment to have been made, but it can never be made again now that they've been proven so horribly wrong in their thesis.
Oh, that's interesting. All right, so you didn't cheat.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just going to the idea that there are some ideas that are just outdated, and you can't do anything about it.
Okay.
All right, so your number 2.
My number 2, I thought was actually going to be made. Because when I heard I thought the original plan was to remake Tron instead of making it a sequel. And Tron was a great movie. It was one of a kind just because of its effect. And I thought making a remake of that and retelling the same story and making a remake, that seemed completely goofy to me. You know, it was one of a kind because of its look, because of the special effects that were made into it. You can't really remake that. You can't recapture that by remaking it with better, you know, oh, it's easy now. We have better effects, so we can make it better. But you're kind of losing the spirit of, you know, what made the original Tron great, which it was like one of a kind.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, they made it a sequel, so I'm good with that. But if it did
a good sequel too.
Yeah, good sequel. So I heard. So yeah, remaking that would have been like a terrible mistake, I think. And it's good that they went the sequel way. And it's like that film and other films, like, you know, that were groundbreaking on the special effects side. Like maybe I'm thinking of Jurassic Park or The Matrix, that were, you know, really showcase those special effects, and they were really relevant at one point in time. You can't really remake those, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will say though, the odd thing about Tron Legacy is that it's another one of those movies that are trying to eat its cake and have it too, in the sense that you can tell that the project started as an intended remake, and then they sort of retooled the script for it to work as a sequel, because the movie spends an awful lot of time reintroducing you to concepts that are exactly the same as the original movie with exactly the same beats, and then it goes in its own direction.
Yeah, but it's been like 20 some years, so you know you need to reintroduce those.
Yeah, but do we really need another light cycle chase? Do we really need another frisbee fight that's almost exactly the same?
Right? Yeah, that's a good point.
It's for me, it was actually the low points of the movie, where the movie started and it was like, I've seen this before. This is kind of weird. Why is he living exactly the same thing that his father lived? And then it went into its own direction and it got cool again.
Okay, that's why I was really on the fence. I didn't go and see it because, you know, I heard remake and I was like really in, and you know I saw the previews and really on the fence on seeing it. But you know I might actually check it out.
But, oh no, I highly recommend it. I actually it was one of my favorite movies that year.
But if it had been a pure remake, I mean, oh god, I would have been one of those trolls on the internet just spamming angry messages on boards.
Yeah,
you can't it was unique in its time. It was great special effects. You can't recapture that really. And
it's also the fact that Tron is sort of has an understanding of computers that's completely outdated.
Yes.
My favorite scene of Tron has Derringer.
Yeah.
Being very afraid of Master Control Program. We're like, oh, I'm going to take over the building. And I was like, pull the plug. Yeah. Press Control Alt Delete. It's not that hard. You're not in real danger.
Yeah.
It was really funny. And just the digital effects, like you say, it's that's one of the risks with even Tron Legacy is our digital effects have reached a point where they look more real than not real. You know what I mean? There's still there's lightness to it that you can tell that it's not quite real, but it doesn't look like the rotoscoping that they did in Tron, certainly. In the case of Tron Legacy, what's kind of cool is they can just stick to more or less the design of Tron and go like, look, it's a sequel.
Yeah.
We're just following the path of what's been said before. But if you make a remake, you have no excuse for creating a virtual world that looks like nothing like what computers achieve in our daily lives.
Yeah.
And if you make it like something that you can achieve on our daily lives in computers, then it's like it looks too real and it just looks like bad special effects. It's sort of, it would have been a catch-22.
That's a good point. Yeah. What is your number two?
Number two, I'm looking at my choices. They're a little bit highfalutin, and I apologize for that. But I wanted to go in a different direction. And another remake that I never want to see, Battleship Potemkin.
Oh God! Wow.
For those of you who aren't film buffs, Battleship Potemkin is a communist, a Russian movie, one of the first to use editing techniques and narrative storytelling. It is one of the movies that created the alphabet currently used in cinema. It is seminal work. Okay. Genius in its creation of those tools. It is also incredibly boring and, almost pedestrian in its story because it was at the beginning of cinema. It created the alphabet, but the alphabet is not a book. I love the alphabet. I use it all the time as a writer. I do not sit on the can and read the alphabet for entertainment. So Battleship Potemkin as a remake would miss the point somewhat. I would, especially since the story, it's a bunch of people on the boat. Evil leader on the boat starts wanting to destroy city. People on the boat, proletariat, decide it's time to mutiny and take down the man.
Yeah.
And take down the man and prove that collectivism is great and can save people.
Okay. That's pretty boring.
Yeah. It's barely a story. And the thing is, I mentioned this almost out of spite because a number of people who tell me, like, oh, I love Battleship Potemkin. Because if you bought the recent DVD version of it, the subtitles are all mine.
Oh,
wow. I rewrote every subtitle of it with a Russian translator to help, obviously.
Okay.
And so it's totally my dialogue that you're reading. And I worked on it, and obviously I had seen it before, but it was a long labor of work, and some of the colleagues were like, oh, it's like working on Battleship Potemkin, and some of them haven't seen it. It's like, yeah, it's cool. It's such a great opportunity to sort of be there to sort of help document in some way, people in pop culture, at least in some way, something that's such seminal work. And you go like, it's a great movie. I was like, and then I sort of like, you know, and I did my little alphabet speech, yeah. And then he looked at me disapprovingly, as if like I'm a neophyte for not considering this a great piece of work. And even though I said it was genius, it's just genius in its time. You know? Yeah. And I went like, and then so I kind of defensively went like, but I imagine, you know, a couple of film students would probably disagree with me. And my colleague went like, yeah, sir. And then she's like, I love Battleship Potemkin. It still works today. And then another, yeah, it still works today. You're completely full of crap. It's like, it's one of the movies that affect me the most. And I look at him going like, so I take it you're a communist then.
They've never seen that movie in their life.
Probably not.
Is what I'm getting from that.
Yeah. But I'm looking at them going like, so you're a communist then? It's like, no. I was like, because this movie is communist propaganda. That's the only purpose of that movie. If you say that movie affected you and succeeded at reaching you, then it turned you into a communist. If it did not, then it failed.
Well, I'm a communist then.
But all that to say that just because of, you know, we tend to remake great movies, okay. But great movies exist in a time and space.
All right.
Citizen Kane is a brilliant movie. I don't want to see it being remade because, not because you're never going to recapture that greatness, but because that greatness has a context.
Okay.
It reinvented cinema. It invented the tools that we use every day in cinema. But if you make a remake, the only way you can match that is by creating new tools. And you might as well just make a new movie if you're going to do that.
Yeah, I guess. That's interesting.
Yeah. That or incredibly pretentious. One of the two. Oh. Your number one pick then.
My number one pick, Indiana Jones.
Oh, great pick.
Yes. The first trilogy is great. And the other movie, the last one, we're not going to mention its name because it doesn't deserve it, kind of destroyed the series completely. It was pretty bad.
Why can't I mention its name?
Because it doesn't deserve to be mentioned. Alright, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or whatever.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls, that's what it was called. Yeah. I like to call it Indiana Jones and the Flying Saucers.
Yes. I like to call it Indiana Jones and the Nuclear Fridge.
It's not a nuclear fridge, it's a nuclear fridge.
Yes. So, one would think that, okay, the last one was a complete disaster. Only Lucas thinks it was great. It's time to reboot it. So let's remake the original Indiana Jones with different actors. But it's not going to work. Indiana Jones, to me, is Harrison Ford doing crazy things. You cannot dissociate Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford, to me. They're together. And they're such a great series. And the actors in there, like when they added Sean Connery as well in the third one, this to me is Indiana Jones. So remaking it with different actors, to me, would just completely ruin it. You know, certain movies are associated with actors and you can't make without.
That's a really good point. And I saw Kingdom of Crystal Skulls in the theater and I didn't hate it nearly as much as everybody else until I reached a certain point. And this is where I think you just hit the nail on the head. Because I'm watching it and it's like, well, this is sort of mediocre. And then they nuke the fridge and I'm like, well, that was really dumb. But I can move past that.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it and it's like, yeah, you know, the dialogue is a little bit too on the nose. It's not letting Harrison Ford act as much as he would be able to. Like, there's a lot of lines where he says things that he used to be able to just convey with a smile or an exasperated look in the previous movies. You can tell it's not really solidly written, but I'm like, oh, this is just mediocre. It's not bad. And then they introduced Mutt Williams, played by Shia LaBeouf, and they set him up to be like the next generation's Indiana Jones. He's going to be the new Indiana Jones. And that made me angry. Like, that made me... and I don't hate Shia LaBeouf. I think he's a talented actor, especially for a very specific type of role. But just the idea of like, you're going to replace Indiana Jones in any sort of fashion just made me angry. And it's like, the movie went from mediocre to like awful, awful, awful. And just like at that exact moment, you know?
Yeah, Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. You make a remake, you better find a time machine and, convince young Harrison Ford. I mean, get in a time machine, film a movie, and then bring him back in time. I'd go for that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Indiana Jones.
And what is your number one pick?
My number one pick, this is way more straightforward, Swing Kids. Now, you may be wondering, why Swing Kids? Because I hate it. It's just really that simple. I hate the very concept of Swing Kids. Because Swing Kids is based on a true phenomenon that happened slightly prior to World War II, which is German youth who did not want to join the German army at the time, where it became mandatory. And really disapproved of the oppressive regime and went into private clubs to dance swing because it was verboten back then.
Yes.
And it's all about the story of these kids and how awesome they are for fighting the man for the right to dance while Jews were being executed.
Yeah.
And, that's a problem. And you can't work around it, even in the remake, because that's historically what happened. And the fact of the matter is, the Swing Kids, I don't necessarily have anything against them, the real people, because I have no idea what their political feelings and affiliation were. They might have danced underground in those things as a quiet rebellion for what happened with the Jews or not. I don't know any of that.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, not all of them were. A lot of them just were down with the men and just wanted to dance.
Yeah.
In the context of what would become one of the most horrifying moment in modern history.
Yeah.
But they didn't know that at the time, so it's not their fault, necessarily. It's a little bit their fault. But let's be honest, it's a little bit their fault. Take that, collaborators. But in the context of what we know now, how can you make them the star of any movie without me wanting to punch them in the face?
Yeah, especially in the movie, they actually made it a point that you see Jews being beaten up, but they're really angry because they can't listen to their music.
Yeah.
If they had made it so that they didn't know that Jews were getting beaten up, and, it was just, you have to join the army and they don't want to, but they actually show a Jew getting beaten up in the movie. So they know about these things, and it's like, forget about them. We want to listen to our music.
I know. I mean, even if they hadn't shown it, it would be a problem. Because in the remake, they could just cut that scene out if they wanted. Yeah. But it would still be problematic because then you'd be asking, how come they don't know?
Yeah.
How come they're not paying attention to what's going on in the world?
Yeah, it's really because the propaganda really started in the 30s that, Jews can't have anything. And so they know. They know that Jews are being mistreated. Maybe not, killed in concentration camp, but they know that there's stuff happening to the Jews that's not very nice.
For sure they know. Because that's how they got out of the recessions, by using that propaganda. So.
Yeah. So, and then, we don't listen to music. And it's not even sticking it to the man, because in Swing Kids, they join the Hitlerian youth anyway, and they keep listening to their music. So they're not even sticking it to the man anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like, I think you say, morally reprehensible. Why did I keep on watching the movie? Because it was in a class. We had to watch it because it showed like the power of brainwashing. And to me, I was forced to watch this crap, and within the first 10 minutes, I couldn't stand any of the characters. The teacher could have chosen a better movie. I've heard there are hundreds of better movies that show that propaganda is bad. But basically that, the Christian Bale character, he gets roped into... They're kind of forced into the Hitlerian youth because they're trying to instill a radio for their friend.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, the Christian Bale character, he really, he gets basically brainwashed by the propaganda.
Yeah.
And at the end, he fights his best friend who didn't get brainwashed for some reason.
Right, he didn't get brainwashed. He just remained apathetic towards all the horrors around him.
Exactly. So you're supposed to learn from that propaganda is bad.
So they're saying you should identify and root and seek moral guidance from the characters who managed to keep all of their faculties, unlike the brainwashed character, and still decided that Jews dying, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those characters that decide that music greater than Jews.
Yeah. Awesome. Great class there.
Yeah.
Wow. But hey, you know what? As horrible as that is, that's what you get when you allow movies like Swing Kids to exist.
Yes.
It happened because we let it happen.
Oh.
That's it for us. If you have any questions, comments, you can write us at mail@idiomanic.com or post a comment right below the episode at idiomanic.com.
Yep. See you next week.